Welcome, everybody, to this morning's episode of Bacon and Coffee. Man, this is going to be a good one. I guarantee it. So, if you are here now, make sure you put your questions in the chat window. You do that on LinkedIn, on the LinkedIn Live. And we're going to start with a 30-second countdown. Here we go. All right, welcome everybody to Bacon and Coffee. It would not be Bacon and Coffee without our bovine and caffeine intro. Here we go. Caffeine, my friend. Mr. Ryan Weiss is in the house today. Ryan, how the heck are you? And where the heck are you?
I'm doing awesome, and I am down here in sunny Florida right now. So it's a great place to be. I got my coffee. I love your intro, by the way. I love the bacon and what better way to start a morning?
Thank you, man. Well, that's awesome. That too. I actually tried to hire somebody to do it. I did it myself. I actually wrote the music and I did the voice, sang it, and all that kind of fun stuff. And you can't even tell it's me because I pitch corrected everything. But yeah, no, it's fun, and that's the whole point behind this. We're here to have fun. We're here to educate people. If anybody is here, go into LinkedIn and let us know. You can put your comments in the chat. We'll see them. We can't necessarily answer them in LinkedIn, but I can at least see them. And anyway, so we are here to talk about orangutans and rocket scientists. And of course, down in Florida, they have real rocket scientists because they take a lot of rockets up. I mean, have you met Elon Musk yet there? I mean, is he doing another launch today?
I have not. I follow a lot of the stuff that he does because I find him fascinating, but I have not met him. No, but
Well,
that would be a pleasure.
I'm sure you will someday because I mean, the stuff that you do is he's very innovative and you're very innovative, and I'm really looking forward to this. So, let's get everybody who doesn't know you to get to know you, and tell everybody who you are, what your name is, and all that kind of fun stuff. What's your company? Just give us the basics.
Awesome. Yeah. So thanks for having me on the show. My name is Ryan Weiss. The company is EPS Zone, so epszone.com. And I started this company about 6 years ago. I was in the corporate world for about 17 years. We moved to Asia and back twice. We moved 7 times in total. And I had some great experiences, but along the way, I learned some things and I really found that I had a passion for people and process and
Hmm.
figuring out how I was going to pull those things together and ultimately create a company out of it is really what drove me to do this. I launched my company about 6 years ago now. It's hard to believe it's been that long.
That's fun, man. And okay, so we were at a breakfast meeting, and you're actually giving a presentation in Illinois coming up in February. And you mentioned something about toilet paper. You know my book, Toilet Paper Math, and you said that toilet paper has how many different kinds of adhesive on it?
Yeah, toilet paper has 4 different types of adhesive. Well, at least the good stuff does, right? It has 4
Hmm.
different types of adhesives, and I spent 17 years in a company that manufactures adhesives. So the first adhesive is making that core, so the internal core. The
Hmm.
second adhesive that gets applied is actually kind of the one that people are most familiar with. It's like the last sheet when you're trying to get the last sheet off of that
Hmm.
roll. Uh, so you got that last sheet. That's actually the first sheet that gets wound onto the roll, and so that adhesive has to be really aggressive and really fast, but
Hmm.
then it's got to completely disappear because people want to be able to get that last sheet off. So
Right.
that's the second one. The third one is if you get the 2-ply stuff, between the plies of toilet paper,
Hmm.
actually has a little bit of adhesive there to hold those together. And then the final one is when you pull the first sheet of toilet paper off the roll,
Hmm.
it sort of kind of pulls away there. So 4 completely different adhesives, different technologies to make all those things successful.
That's crazy, man. And I mean, you really know your crap. There's no question about that, right? And the second one is that who would think, you don't really think about that kind of stuff. And the amount of work that goes into putting a roll of toilet paper together, because you just buy it on Amazon, you throw out the cardboard, it's usually pretty straightforward, but there's a lot more that goes into things. And I think that's a good segue for the kind of thing that we're going to be doing today. We're going to be talking about processes. So your new book coming out is called what?
It's From Orangutan to Rocket Scientist: How
Mhm.
to Lead and Engage Your Team with Effective Process.
Okay. So explain the orangutan part of that. I get maybe it's the sapiens, are you going back to the caveman days, or how does that work?
No, so this actually goes back to when I first started linking people and process together. And I
Mhm.
was in my corporate role, I was actually going out and training a bunch of people on process. And we had one particular training slide that said, it said something along the lines of what is required to change.
Mhm.
And then in that slide, there were three things. There was a triangle. It said tools, skills, and mindset.
Mhm.
And and so yeah, as I was looking at the slide, and I'm like, I don't know. So I just, the first couple of times I saw that slide and presented it, I just sort of talked about it. But then one day I was at the Henry Dorley Zoo in Omaha, Nebraska,
Mhm.
and I was reading this sign about this orangutan that lived there. I think in like the 50s or 60s. I forget the actual time period, but this was a sign, a huge sign next to the orangutan cage. Talked about this orangutan named Fu Manchu and how he kept escaping from the cage, and he was creating chaos all around the zoo. And so as they were trying to figure out, the head zookeeper, right, the
Mhm.
guy in charge, was actually getting upset. He was going to fire somebody. Like, why are you guys so careless? Why do you keep letting the orangutans out? Until one day they saw Fu Manchu over by the door, and he's playing around. All of a sudden the door pops open, and he gets out, and the other orangutans follow him, and they go wreak havoc in the zoo. And
Party!
yeah, so I linked this together with the tools, skills, and process. And that's kind of how the book starts, is talking about what's required to change, what's required to get out of your cage or to do something different.
Right.
And that's where that comes from.
Very cool. And then, so, by the way, we got our first comment. Mark Louderback from Fort Collins, Colorado says, "Hey." Um, so the key question then is, how does it go from orangutan to rocket scientist?
Yeah, so everybody is needs these three things to change or to grow or to develop. And what I often find is that organizations, whether
Hmm.
that's no matter what type of organization, rocket scientists or chemical companies or uh, restaurants, there are those same three things are required. You need to have tools, you need to have
Hmm.
skills, and you need to have mindset. And that's what the orangutan really demonstrated. He had to have a tool. He had to have a lock pick to get out. He had to have the skills. He had to know how to use them, and
Hmm.
then he had to have the mindset. And most organizations spend a ton of time talking about tools and skills, but that mindset piece is often what's missing. And rocket scientists need the same types of things in order
Hmm.
to create the energy in the organization and go where they need to go.
Right. And the mindset can also be looked at as purpose too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, excellent. All right, so let's kind of dive into it. Let's get to the brass tacks of what we're going to be talking about today. So you have three core points in this book that you try to get across. So what's point number one?
Yeah. So the first thing is really that clearly aligned processes enable your team to perform and
Hmm.
ultimately fulfill your organization's purpose. So in the rocket, there are these 5 P's that I talk about. But that sentence that I just said is really the foundation. The purpose of your rocket is the point. Where are you focusing? Where are you going to? If you're not pointing it in the right direction, then then you know nobody in your organization knows where we're going. They
Right.
know maybe what they're responsible for today, but they don't know where they're going. And then you've got the product. So what's your payload that you're taking to Mars, right? You mentioned Elon Musk before. His purpose is crystal clear at SpaceX. They they have the purpose that they're going to Mars. and everybody knows it. Someday we're going to colonize Mars, and the payload is going to be the humans that are going to go there and be able to survive on Mars.
Hmm.
And performance metrics, right? How do we know where we're at today and where we're going in the future? What are the metrics we use? And then you come down to the people. So who are the people who are the rocket scientists, the people who are bringing this all together? And the bottom of the rocket ship is your process. If your process isn't working, if the components of that rocket ship are not working in coordination in order to go where you think you want to go, then nothing's going to happen.
Right.
And so those are the 5 P's of this rocket ship. So clearly aligned processes enable your team to perform and ultimately fulfill your organization's purpose. Is that first key takeaway?
I love it. So what's the second key takeaway?
So the second one is process without people is wasted,
Hmm.
and people without good process are frustrated.
Hmm.
I think organizations often find they sort of focus on one or the other. Some organizations spend a lot of time doing manager training and leader training and things like that. Some focus a lot on like Six Sigma and these very specific process related things. But one without the other is is going to cause you some type of problem. So
Hmm.
process without people is waste, and people without process are frustrated.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So before we get to the third one, there's a joke I want to ask you.
Okay.
How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb?
I have no idea. I have a good friend who's a psychologist, but I have no idea what
The
the
answer
answer to
is
this one is.
simple, just one, but the light bulb has to want to change.
That's right. I'm definitely sharing that with Dr. Dave. That'll be
So
fun.
so take us into the third point because it's all about change.
Yeah. So the third, in order to change, the team must possess the tools, skills, and mindset. Those 3 things I was talking about
Mhm.
with the orangutan. And I often find that one of those is missing. And I've got some great clients today that as we're talking at the beginning of my engagement with them, they're what's missing in your organization. And I've had people say, well, it's the mindset. My people just aren't that engaged. And I said, well, did you hire disengaged people, or did they become disengaged over time?
Mhm.
Maybe going back to point 2 about, people without process are frustrated. And so that's the third point. In order to change, your team must possess those 3 things.
That's right, and they have to want to change.
They have to want to change.
That's right. And so jumping off from that point, let's dive in. And one of the things I've learned, especially with writing a book, is people purchase a book because they have a perceived problem or they love the title or things like that. But in order to get somebody to finish a book, they have to be engaged with the content. So what is the perceived problem that would make somebody want to pick up your book? What's the core thing? What are they seeing in their business?
Yeah, I think there's really sort of 2 things that are happening. One
Hmm.
is a disengaged team. So we've got some great case studies and share some great case studies about those disengaged teams that are frustrated. And the second is if you've got broken processes. And I typically ask 2 questions. And I think almost all my clients today, I would say all my new clients over the past year, I've asked these 2 questions. The first one is, uh, what what pain do you experience when people don't follow your process? And when I get people, when people sort of start self-reflecting about, okay, what pain do I experience when people don't follow my process? So a CEO or a VP of a large team might say, what pain do I experience when people don't follow my process? And sometimes the answer is, I don't have a process, right? But the second question is, uh, what pain does your organization experience when your process breaks down? So even
Hmm.
if you do have a good process, what pain is your organization feeling when that process doesn't go as planned? And so
Hmm.
it's really those 2 questions, I think, that help people. And if they have pain or their
Hmm.
organization has pain, then this book will walk you through the steps for how to look at, evaluate, and come to some resolution on fixing it.
So if somebody has a pain, let me give you an example of something that happens in my business in the website world, right? Customers are taught that more traffic equals more business, right? And so they think that, if I can get more traffic to my website, just do SEO, do more SEM, all that kind of fun stuff. I get more traffic, I'm going to get more business. And the perceived problem was we're not getting enough traffic to our website, right? And I've worked with a handful of customers that basically have said, get us more traffic to our website. And I said, are you sure that's what you want? And they were spending like, tens of thousands of dollars on advertising and SEO and all this other stuff. And so what we did is we shut all that stuff off and the traffic went down, right? It just immediately started going down. It got down to nothing. One customer went from 5,000 to 1,500, hits per month on their website. And they came back to me and they said, hey, our website is getting like a third of the traffic we were getting before. I said, okay, well, how are your sales? And they said, our sales have improved because they were getting more targeted people there. They weren't getting tire kickers, people that were eating up their time, right? So the key point is they were taught that more traffic equals more business, when in reality, targeted traffic, less traffic actually equaled more business. So what's kind of that analogy in what you do for customers that they see something and they're kind of misunderstanding the real issue?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I alluded to sort of this case study a little bit ago
Hmm.
that I had a client early January of 2021. So it's about almost exactly a year ago that approached me and said, "Hey, my team is stressed out. My team is frustrated. They're struggling. They're sort of floundering. Right? The
Hmm.
COVID situation had completely disrupted, and so the people were frustrated. They were struggling, and we actually did a survey on Mentimeter. I use Mentimeter as sort of a tool to facilitate these discussions, and
I
it,
love that tool, man. That thing is so cool because you were giving the coolest thing about it is when you're giving a live presentation. I don't have one set up today, but when you're doing something like this, you can actually just get the pulse of the audience and stuff like that,
yeah,
and it comes up with a word cloud or comes up with a graph or all that kind of stuff. It's just amazing to be able to capture that data on the fly. That's
yeah.
awesome.
So
Yeah.
so we're working with this client and talking to them about the so asking these folks, how do you feel today in terms of being overworked and work life balance and clarity of your role and stress or frustration. And in early 2021, they were way over to the left, right? They were like they were feeling terrible. And when the CEO introduced us to the team, they're like, we don't have time for this. We don't have time to document our processes and look at what our we're spinning around with our just everything's going crazy. But we she proceeded with it with her team, and as we went through it, we asked them again at the end, how do you feel with these things? And it was 2 to 3 times improvement in terms of stress level, clarity of their roles, the work life balance, because after documenting their processes, even though this was perceived as an added thing they had to do,
Hmm.
the documentation and the clarity of their processes and alignment between people was really the core problem. That was the thing that was causing them to
Right.
spin around. And so that's, I think, to your point, it's the perceived problem was my team's frustrated. They're go, we're struggling.
There's
We're floundering.
chaos everywhere. I mean, they're now
Yeah.
having to work from home. They have to deal with the kids. They have to still get work done. Nobody can find them because their work phone isn't transferring. They're working on their cell phones. I mean, things just are, it was quite the
Yeah.
craziness. And I think one of the biggest challenges during that time frame was that customers, companies wanted to take the processes that they had in place and try to transfer them to a completely disruptive situation, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
so
right.
that's huge. And so you were able to at least get them, they perceived it to be this, and then by the time you figured it out, it was something different.
Yeah.
So what is, and again, this may be reiterating the same thing again, but what is the real problem? And this may get deep, this may be, what is is it the CEO, CMO, the EIEIO, somebody holding back this organization because they don't want to do this process analysis or things like that? What's the real
Yeah.
problem?
Yeah. So if I one of the things I love process. People who know me, they're like, Ryan's sort of a process geek, right?
Hmm.
Uh, but if I ask a room of people, if I ask a big room of people, how many of you want to document your process today? almost silent, right? Nobody's that interested. A lot of people are like, I don't want to, I don't have
I
time for that.
I love it, man. I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle of it. I'm actually doing all of that stuff. That just geeks me out. I'm with you
There,
110%. You
yes,
know?
there's some, right? There's a few
Yeah.
geeks like you and I, right?
Right.
But
Exactly.
but a
Yeah.
lot of people are like, that sounds like extra work, right?
Right.
I've got to take care of my customer. I gotta, buy, I got supply chain issues. I've got all these other things. Like, why am I gonna stop and
Hmm.
document my process? But um, the thing that I find is that unclear processes or perceptions about, oh, this is my department's process and that's their department's process, and if they only followed my process, then everything would be better.
Hmm.
Um, but there's sort of these frustrations that happen between people and between departments about perceptions, and getting everybody to sit together in a room or even in a virtual room and document their process in a fun way, because I get it. I don't want to just, people are like, one step after another, and it can get boring. But when we get people engaged and have fun with it, when when we start seeing true clarity between the people,
Hmm.
that's what pumps me up, because uh, that's actually the problem that's happening is people have perceptions because they're so busy doing the things they're supposed to do every day. They don't
Right.
have time to step back and say, all right, how do we align this all together and get
Right.
things all moving the right way?
And so let me give you a real life example of that. And there are two other comments. Hey, the Dutchman, which is Jeff, said, "Hey," and Mark Lauterbach said, "I am Fu Manchu," so he must be an orangutan. Um, but let me give you a real life example of just that, the real problem. So I've been running my business for years, and I realized I got to the point where I needed to hire a project manager, but I had nothing set up, right? So I want you to go manage the projects, I want you to manage people, I want you to manage workflow, but I got nothing done, right? I don't have any of that stuff outlined. And then after I hired her, I realized how little I had outlined.
Mhm.
And the other day, I had a moment of clarity, and I did this thinking about this interview today. Okay. So we're going through this process. And one of the things that we do for our clients is we create ebooks. And the ebook is a process, and it involves, when I sat down and looked at it, it involves 8 people, right? And there's basically layered processes. So the first thing we do is we interview the client, right? We interview the client, say, okay, tell us about what's cool, all that other stuff. The writer's on there, and then the writer writes an outline, then the outline gets approved, and then the writer writes the content. And once that's approved, then that gets handed over to a designer who designs the book. So that triggers the designer to do something. But that the same time that we hand it to her, that writer goes back and write blog posts. So they're doing these pieces, right? So they're all kind of layered on top of each other. Then, as soon as the writer is done with the blog post, those have to get put up on the website. As soon as the designer gets done with the ebook, that has to get put up on the website, right? So then those two things trigger other things that have to go on. We have to get the blogs on the website. We have to get the downloadable ebook on the website. We have to get the form integrated, right? There's all these different pieces. And then from there, when that's done, then the blogs have to be sequenced and scheduled. And then they have to be linked back to the ebook. And then we have a social media person, we have an email person, and then we have an email drip person that all have to be sequenced in that process. There is a whole and when I looked at that, I went, holy crap. And when I was explaining it to her, I just got this clarity. It's like, oh my God, why? I was doing this just kind of like off the top of my head for years.
Yeah,
And when I finally sat down and looked at it, I said, wait a minute, this is repeatable. This is, I
yeah,
can go through and put the steps. I can, put in subtasks. I can have trigger points. I'm sitting here looking at this process going, holy crap, right? I mean,
yeah.
is that what you see with when these people get to that point when they, you start working with it?
Yeah, I had a client earlier, well, last year,
Hmm.
that it's called High Performance Salon Academy, and what they do is they like teach salon owners how to improve their process and profitability,
Hmm.
and so these guys have a process similar to what you just described. It's like all these pieces, all these things moving, and we did a series of 3 workshops with them and their team, looking at their customer journey map and
Hmm.
saying, where do things break down? Where are the problems at that break down in this process?
Hmm.
And as they started looking at it, and they've got a pretty good sized team of people all working on those different components, just like you just described.
Right.
And they said, you know what if we had like a client concierge who, because there were like 5 or 6 different people that a client was interacting with at the time. And so in just a couple of short workshops, they started realizing, what if we had a client concierge who just sort of took that client all the way through the process? And that's what they've transformed to. And it's made their employees have, the anxiety went down for them, right? Because they
Hmm.
said, you know what? Now I don't have to worry about, did that person actually get the stuff they needed to do what they need to do, and did that person, and did I actually trigger the next step in the process? And somebody doesn't, get mad because somebody didn't pick up where they were supposed to because they didn't know, and those types of things aren't happening anymore because
Hmm.
they have a consistent flow of all that. So it's very eye opening for organizations, especially in the virtual world we're living in, to be able to see those things happening and be able to figure out how do we make that so much smoother.
Hmm.
And it gets me so excited when we find something like that, when gets fixed, and when the employees get happier and the
Right.
client retention goes up dramatically. That's what we're looking for.
Okay, so the next piece of this puzzle is, what is the solution to the problem, the real problem, the perceived problem? And basically, I think you've kind of covered it, but I want you to go into some more detail. What are the things when you come up with the solution, and it's not necessarily the process of getting to the end result, it's what are the things that they have to kind of capture, right? They have to be able to figure out what are the steps, what are the processes, what are the loophole, like you said, where was the hole in the system, right? So
Yeah.
what's that solution? What do they have to look at?
So the way that I facilitate this, the way I take people through this is thinking about your customer journey map
Hmm.
and thinking about your customer's process. As your customer, like, how do they become aware of you? How do they become a client? How do you help them? How do they, what's your process for operations and for collecting money from them and for, retaining or upselling them? What's that process of what your customer goes through? And the reason that I start there is that if I start with an individual department, I think a lot of organizations, they think of process and they say, we should look at our operations department. That's where our process is. And then you start sub-optimizing these operational processes because each department or each part of your operation says, well, this is what my process is, and this is what my process is. And when we take a step back from all of that, the first process I want to build with any organization is, what does your customers process look like as they interact with your
Hmm.
organization?
Yep.
And I take them through a something called a SIPOC. It's a process map that is often used in like Lean and Six Sigma for internal stuff. But
Hmm.
I found years ago, I started looking at this and saying, I want to look at my customer's process first and understand that. And then I can understand what pain am I actually causing them, or what pain could I be solving that I'm not solving.
Hmm.
And so I take folks through this exercise of looking at their customer process in a different way. And then from that, let's subordinate all of our processes to ensuring that the client process is working smoothly. And what that does is it takes all the friction away between, well, I do it my way because of this, and I do it my way because of that. And
Hmm.
it starts saying, forget all that stuff. Let's do it the right way for the customers, the customer's process. And all of a sudden, if we subordinate all of our processes to the customer, it takes away that friction between employees that are having, conflict about why they want to do things their own way. And it says, let's do it the best way for the customer. And strangely, what happens is employees start, you know, sort of their walls start breaking down, and they say, "You're
Hmm.
right. Let's do it that way, right?" Instead of making it protectionist, it's about, let's do the right thing.
Right, and I could see how it creates that cohesiveness between everybody, and so basically what you're saying in the solution is, number 1, you have to look at it from the customer's perspective, and then look at how your processes fit along that journey, and look for the places where there are pain points, where there are holes, where you could do it better, where your team could interact in a way that's gonna make it more efficient, all of those things combined, right?
Absolutely, that's exactly right. You figured out the magic to the book.
Yeah, there we go. Well, that's the whole point of why we're here,
That
dude.
is.
Yeah.
Indeed, right? I I am so passionate about helping people and organizations do this type of thing.
Hmm.
You know, that's exactly it. I want people to succeed. I we you know, I think the timing of this is perfect. If you look at the Great Resignation and the
Hmm.
all the people changing roles and the level of employee disengagement, you can look on, do some research on how engaged are employees today, and
Hmm.
it everything I see out there, it's at an all-time low.
Right.
So when I can help an organization to take that employee engagement, the fuel that's propelling your rocket ship is the
Hmm.
human energy or engagement of your employees, and say it may be at an all-time low today. If we can use this solution to help those flames grow stronger,
Hmm.
that's the only way you're getting to Mars, is
Right.
if you've got enough energy, right? I love, some of the technical stuff Elon Musk talks about, the things that need to happen in order to get to Mars and get there successfully. You need a lot of energy coming from your organization, coming from your rocket ship.
Hmm. And I'm very concerned about getting to Mars, but as an astronaut, I would be more concerned about getting back.
That's right. That's right.
So don't forget that part of the process. So going, along the lines with what you're saying, I just want to see if there's any other comments, and there's not at this point. And if you have any questions, put them in. We'll answer them towards the end. So back to what you said, going back to the customer journey and then integrating, the employee side of things. I mean, this disruption was crazy, right? And I still see it today with the people that I work with. They're working from home still. Some of them are, some of them are in the office, but the ones that are working from home have to deal with the fact they've got to do their work, and then their kids get sick with COVID and have to stay home, and then they're quarantining, or they get sick with COVID and they've got to quarantine and can't take care of their family. And there's still a lot of this disruption going on. So there's an opportunity to look at this, and now is probably the best time in the world to really look at those processes, because I think the companies that are going to solidify and innovate, and I'll give you another example of that. In the middle of the pandemic, there were three key things that I thought that were really uber important. Number one is, how do we sell, right? How do you sell things to people? And what's the process? When you bring them in, are you using hand sanitizer? The salon's a great example. Are you masking? Are you wearing hand sanitizer? How is stuff getting cleaned down? That's part of the sales process. So what do we need to do in order to create a sale? The second thing is, what do we sell, right? And so, the thing is that in the hair salon business, and I'm just going to throw another idea out there, is people weren't getting their hair cut as often, right? So their hair was longer, it was grayer, and so of course everybody's getting more gray hairs because of the pandemic and staying home and all the stress and all that stuff. So, you know, what do we sell? The thing is, we're going to sell haircuts to people less often, but maybe they need a color, right? So you need a color station, then they need a cut, then they need a conditioning, then they need some supplies, right? Because there are different things that you could do. So based on where we're at right now, what's the process of selling that? And then the last piece is, who do we sell to? And one of the things I learned in the middle of the pandemic was that the companies that focused more on their current and past customers were much more successful. So how do they communicate to their current customers, rather than going out there saying, hey, let me explain our entire process and all the things we do to you as a new customer so that you think we're better than the competition, right? They spend a lot of money going down that road, when really all they had to do is like, hey, you haven't been in a while, we understand your pain point, give us a call, we got a concierge now that's going to listen to your issues, right?
Yeah.
And so that whole thing, those three core problems really brought up a lot of anxiety with people, and that, I think, is a great way to look at the solution of this problem for them, right?
That's right. And this can really be transformational for an organization.
Mhm.
It's not just about saying let's incrementally improve a process or something. It's really about, it can really be transformational in how you service your existing clients and
Mhm.
how you approach them and how you solve the pain or need that they have. And that's one of the super exciting things as I work with clients on these type of things is going through that process and identifying, understanding, and then solving
Mhm.
what that looks like.
Right. So, okay, so now let's define the process that you go through. All right. What are the steps? Now, if somebody was to do this themselves, or what do you take them through? Either way, what is the things that they have to do? What's the order? What's the concepts that they're trying to gather in, to get to that outcome that we're looking for?
Yeah, so great question. So the first thing is we have, and folks who buy the book, or we'll have the strategy map as a downloadable template on our website.
Hmm.
The being able to look at your strategy and saying, where are we at today, right? Looking at the current state of your purpose, product, performance, people, process, and saying, what gaps do we have today?
Hmm.
If you look at where are we going in the future, the purpose, and then you look at our product, what do we sell today? That's the nose cone of the ship, the payload and the direction that it's pointing,
Hmm.
and doing some gap assessment of, are we selling today what we want to be selling in the future? Are we, those questions you just asked about who are my clients, and what is it that we're actually selling to them, and how are we selling it to them? That stuff's all in the nose cone there.
Hmm.
So thinking about where we at today and where do we want to be in the future is a little bit of a gap assessment. Then the next layer down is something, the performance metrics, the dashboard, if you will. There's something that I call QVS, and I don't know if we have time for a story about my heart condition in the Philippines and visiting a
Oh
doctor,
God,
and
yes.
how
Yeah.
how we came to this, right?
Yeah, no,
So
go for it. But QVS, is that where you buy pillows and stuff like that?
no, no, no.
Okay, I'm confused. All right, well then go ahead and explain
So
that so we
so
understand it.
yeah, so QVS is the next part of my process. It's quality, value, and speed.
Mhm.
So every process that I find and every process that I work with, almost everybody wants to know, how do we measure the quality of this process?
Mhm.
How do we measure the value or the cost of this process? And how do we measure the speed or timeliness of this process? And so that's the concept of quality, value, speed, QVS. And and the way I came up with this idea was actually, so when I was in the Philippines working for the chemical company, I had almost 200 employees, and I was working night shift, and I started having some chest pain, and I went to visit a doctor because I was having chest pain, and I'm like, this is not good. And this Filipino doctor sitting on the other side of the desk, and I walk into his office, and he asked me a few questions that changed my life. He said, what, so what brings you in today? And I said, well, I'm having chest pain, and it's unusual. I've never experienced this before. And he said, well, tell me about your job. Is it stressful? And I said, no, I manage 180, 200 people on night shift. They're great people, and we have a lot of fun. And he said, oh, so how much coffee do you drink? And I said, well, I drink a couple Americanos every night. We've got a Starbucks on the first floor, and I take some of my managers down there, and we drink some coffee. And he said, oh, he said, so how much sleep do you get? And I said, well, I don't sleep much because I drink coffee to stay awake every night. you know And he said, so how much exercise do you get? And this is my process mind thinking, putting this all together here, right? I'm like, well, I can't exercise because I'm always tired because I drink coffee every night to stay awake to manage this team of 180 people, right?
Right.
Um, and uh, and his the next words out of his mouth, he said, you seem like a smart guy. You'll figure this out. You don't need medication or tests.
Mhm.
And that just stopped me. I thought, here's I think in America, right? Sometimes we go to the doctor, and
Oh, they
they prescribe
immediately
something, right?
you would be in the hospital, you would have an EKG, you would have a stress test, you'd have
so
an MRI, you'd have all that
yeah.
other stuff, and this
So
guy's just looking at you going, "Dude, here's all you gotta do.
yeah,
Quit drinking as much coffee, get more sleep, and exercise." And you're just sitting there going, "Wait, that means I have to change. I
yeah,
actually
and
have to change my lifestyle. I actually wait a minute. Can't you just give me a pill so that I don't have to change? Do you have a, I don't have to change pill? That's what I want."
that's what I want, right?
Yeah,
But so tools, skills, and mindset, right? So I'm
right.
sitting there going, man, you know what? He's right. I do have more stress than I think I have.
Mhm.
And about that same time, the top manager who ended up replacing me when I moved away from Singapore, her name was Riza.
Mhm.
And Riza, about that same time, asked me a question. One day in the office, she said, "Boss, don't you trust me?" And that
Hmm.
stopped me in my tracks, right? So here I am, I'm having stress, I'm having, chest pain. I've got my top manager asking me, "Boss, don't you trust me?" I think something's going wrong, right?
Right.
And what I realized is that as I had elevated to managing this large team of people, I was still trying to do the same things that I was when I had a smaller team of people. I was trying to understand all the things that were going on. I was trying to, there's no way I could know what all those people were doing and all the problems that were happening. And I said, all right, we've got to figure out a way of creating a structure so my managers know that I trust them and that they can do what needs to be done.
Hmm.
And so we had a bulletin board. We created a bulletin board outside of my office, and each team, we had 10 teams, and each of those teams put up a quality metric, a value metric, and a speed metric. And uh, and they were responsible for reporting, creating those metrics and reporting on those every month,
Hmm.
and then also saying what experiment were they going to take. And what happened was they started taking ownership. All the teams started taking ownership of quality, value, and speed in their process.
Hmm.
It took a while to get there. It,
Sure.
the team wanted me to tell them what metrics to use, and I resisted. I said, I can't define your metrics for you. I trust you. You're going to come up with something that's relevant. You're going to come up with something that is
Hmm.
improvable, something that matters, right? And I gave them a framework, and they created those things, and they started owning it. So this is what I mean by performance.
Hmm.
It's not about the CEO or the head of the department saying, I'm going to figure this all out on my own. It's about how do you transfer that. This is why performance comes in between people. It's not that
Right.
people are less important than performance. I think sometimes CEOs get that wrong. They're like, I just need to figure out, if I make my performance, I don't care about my people. That's a terrible idea. That's not why performance comes above people.
Right.
The concept here is quality, value, and speed. Get your people to buy in and create those metrics that matter to them, that are aligned with your purpose, right? The
Hmm.
people have to know it's aligned with your purpose. But once that alignment comes together, now we get down to people, and the ownership that they take at at working on their metrics, making
Right.
sure that they're solving the product problems you have today, and
Hmm.
going towards that vision of the purpose in the future.
Right. So again, to go through those steps, the first one is the purpose. The second
Purpose,
one is the process
product. It's
or product.
second one's product, right? This is
Yeah.
actually, and when I say product, I mean, this is a customer journey map that helps you to start
Right.
articulating what the whole framework looks like. So
Right.
so your product is not just, not just, oh, we sell widgets. It's
Hmm.
it's what's the customer journey map of understanding, becoming aware, coming through the process. Then
Right.
we go to performance, then we go to people, and the final one is our processes that support all of this stuff that's happening there.
Right.
So, what are the processes that our people need to have in place to support this whole rocket ship going where it needs to go? So,
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
the sequence I go through.
Yeah. And
It's
that's
it's not
that's
because it's not necessarily order of priority. It's order of sequence to get to what you need to do.
right. And you may get down to the people side of things, and you've got your process below it, and you've got the performance above it, right? And so
That's
you
right.
could sit there and look at those two things and say, okay, well, we've got our performance and our process, but in between, we're missing some people to actually manage this.
That's right.
Just like I was missing that person who could project manage for me, right?
That's
I
that's
was
exactly right.
missing that person. And once I started to define the process, I had the purpose. I knew what the purpose was. I knew what the product was. I knew what the, performance was. I knew exactly what it could do, but I was missing that person. I needed to get somebody in there who could help me manage that entire rocket ship. I need somebody who's more like, I call her, and she's going to get mad that I actually say this, but her nickname is Sister Mary Air Traffic Controller, because that's what she does. So I call her Sister Mary Flight Plan because she's part, air traffic controller, making sure that everything happens at the right time. And she's also a knuckle slapper. That's why my knuckles are flat from, when I went to parochial school at, a little kid. But the concept is that, but it's a loving way of looking at things. And that's exactly
Yeah.
what I needed. I needed somebody who could, make sure that all the planes are coming in and landing at the same time. But then also when something gets out of whack to, alert people, right? And
That's
that's
right.
the key. So that I think that's awesome. Okay, so now let's get to the final piece of this, and that is the outcome, right? So now we understand, the perceived problem, the real problem, the solution, of aligning those things, and then the actual process that people have to go through. And like you said, there is no exact order. You just don't do bing, 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 bing.
Mhm.
It's a little bit more. You've got to look at it holistically. So, what's the outcome? What have you seen? That what does this do to a company in the long term? Not just a short term, because I'm sure immediately there's going to be some pain points. There's going to be some glitches. There are going to be those things. But what's the big outcome that comes from this?
So the big outcome is the human energy. It's the engagement of employees that really start working together cohesively and propelling the rocket ship. So when I first started down this path, and this has been a journey. I think you mentioned when you write books, you you're putting this framework in your mind and you're testing different ideas and trying to figure out like how does this stuff I want to make sure I can articulate it, want to make sure that it all works together and things like
Mhm.
that. The thing that I find is that the human energy, the engagement is the outcome. It's actually it propels people
Mhm.
to do the right things for the right reasons and to be engaged, because one of the problems is that if your organization lacks trust, if the people don't feel that they're trusted by management, or if they feel that they're sub-optimizing their process, they may not think of it that way, but they think, oh, my process, if everybody would just follow it, it would be better. you know, People get disenfranchised, they get
Mhm.
disengaged if they feel that if they feel they're doing a bunch of work and management doesn't care because it's not aligned with the purpose of the organization, then they get disengaged. If they don't know how they're being measured, right? If the people don't know what those performance metrics are and they don't know how they're being measured, then they become disengaged.
Right.
If they don't have confidence that they're providing a good product to or service to their customer, they become disengaged. So what I found is, and this came through a variety of discussions with clients and other people, is that the human energy, the engagement, the rocket fuel that's happening here, um, is not some magical thing that, oh, we're just going to put our people through training and they're going to suddenly be more engaged. We're going to put a ping pong table in, they're suddenly going to be more engaged. That's not the trying to create human engagement through some of those things is really missing the core meaning that people are searching for, and
Mhm.
that drives them to be engaged. And when you line these elements of the rocket ship up together, this is what creates the energy and engagement of people to really thrust and drive the organization forward. And so when I go back and do these Mentimeter things, follow up workshops with clients, and I ask the question, um, you know, where were you 6 months ago in terms of clarity of purpose and the and your stress level and your
Mhm.
work life balance? Where were you? And they give me numbers in the 1 to 1.5 range,
Mhm.
and I say, where are you at today? And they give me numbers that are 3 to 4 range. I think this is successful, right? This is
Mhm.
We've helped employees be engaged. We've helped employees. I had a mentor who once told me, he said, Ryan, you spend more of your waking hours with your fellow employees, with your colleagues, than you do your family or
Mhm.
friends. And
Yep.
that left an impact on me. So when we think about that human engagement, that employee engagement and customer engagement, if we give people the purpose, the
Mhm.
product, the performance, the process, we give them all those things, the engagement comes as a result. It's not the other way around.
Right. That totally makes sense. So I got a couple of points on top of that. Number one, so just buying somebody a foosball table or giving them yoga classes in the middle of the day or snooze pods is not going to make the difference, right?
Right.
That's what a lot of companies tend to do. Is if we can make the work environment better, they're going to like us more. The other thing that I got from this is, and this goes back to one of the core things that I say in my business. I'm in the relationship marketing business. I'm in the business of trying to get customers and their perfect clients to have a relationship. I consider myself a matchmaker between prospects and salespeople, not leads and salespeople, prospects. So the key thing that I say is relationships are the currency of business. And I think one of the missed relationships when we say that is the relationships you have with your own people working in the organization. is giving them more satisfaction, making them feel like you trust them, like that woman came to you, giving them, and if they're managing their own metrics, if they're coming up with their own metrics, they take ownership of those metrics, like you said. So and not only will it retain people, you'll get more people to come to the company because other people are going to say how happy they are. And it actually builds a lot of different tentacles into creating a high performance company. Would you agree with those?
Absolutely. Well said.
Thank
I
you.
love it.
Yeah, so that's kind of the cornerstone of what this does. Okay, so we got time for a handful of questions. I got one right now, and I'll ask you a couple others. Um, Mark said people departments are often wed to their processes. What's your process to get these people to buy in and do all the work to create better processes for the future? So what do you do?
Yeah. So this goes back to the tools, skills, and mindset, right?
Right.
So it's a
Remember,
great
he said
question.
he's Fu Manchu, right? So he's an orangutan.
This is exactly right. So um, the way I facilitate these workshops, and I think that's actually kind of the magic sauce of what we do that really gets things to be fun,
Hmm.
is not just to get people in a room and start putting post-it notes and it's about engaging people and using some of these analogies, using some of these stories, using some of these ways of the Fu Manchu thing. I've been telling that story for it was probably 15 years ago when I went to the Henry Doorly Zoo and saw this with my twins. They were probably
Hmm.
4 or 5 years old at the time. I've been telling this for years, and the impact that when people start seeing, and I guess I didn't tell the end of the story. You can read it in the book, but the tools, skills, and mindset thing, um, you know, a lot of times we can give people, a new software program, a new ERP program, and
Hmm.
say, well, you have the tools, right? We can give them leadership training and communication training and some type of assessment, right? There's lots of great assessments out there. We give them some skills, and then I had a CEO probably about 4 or 5 months ago who mentioned to me. He said, "Well, I give my people all the tools they need. I give them all the skills they need. The problem is that they don't have the mindset." And I had to kind of carefully ask the question, but I asked him, do they not have the mindset because you hire people who are disengaged and that type of thing, or do they not have the mindset because they've been broken down over time,
Hmm.
right? And that's a painful question for a CEO or a leader, a VP, a president of a company to hear and reflect on,
Hmm.
right? Because we all like to think we hire good people, right? I don't
Right.
want to. I don't hire. I don't hire dumb people who are incapable, who are demotivated. I hired good people for a reason. They had a great resume. They interviewed well, and
Right.
now they're disengaged. What does that say about my leadership, right? What does that say? And it's not to say that I'm a bad person as a leader,
Right.
but what does that say about the culture that's happening in my organization?
Right.
And so I think bringing all those things together and having some self-awareness that the mindset of the people may not be because I have bad people or hired bad people. It may be that I need to lead and I need to create framework and I need to create that energy again.
Right.
And so I hope I've answered Mark's question that it's not just about saying, all right, here's a new software system. Now figure it out. It's not about
Hmm.
saying, here's some training, now figure it out. It's about engaging the people and saying, you know, is what we're doing today working? And the answer is, if the answer is no,
Right.
then getting them uncomfortable enough, like if I'm in a comfortable seat, I'm just gonna be happy sitting here, right?
Right.
I can complain about, oh, that looks like a nicer seat over there, and I wish I was sitting in Florida, I wish I was in Bermuda, or you know, but if I'm comfortable in my lazy boy recliner in my basement, I have no reason to get up and move.
Right.
People have to reach a level of discomfort where their mindset is, I want to move over there. I actually want to get up, physically move my computer. I want to move. Like, I want to do something different. And so getting people to that uncomfortable place where they
Hmm.
feel some discomfort gets
Right.
them motivated to move to the next spot.
And Mark said you're spot on about about senior leaders creating disengagement and the emperor has no clothes kind of things. And I think even taking that a step further, And that goes down to, the reason people get disengaged because they don't feel like they own it, right? They don't feel they've got skin in the game. They don't feel like they're measured the right way. They're getting rewarded for what they do. It's like I remember the process of annual reviews at AT&T, and basically the forms, were basically whether we're sweeping the floors or we're a VP. It was basically the same measurement to some degree. How are you at this? How are you at this? They were measuring all these different things when, I was in a creative process. I was doing videos. I was doing, you can't measure me on, time management, effectiveness, and ROI. It's just those things don't, you can't, you're asking somebody to be creative on a dime, right? And to measure the effectiveness of what you do. You can't do that. So that's number one. But to your point, and this is something I've learned with LinkedIn. This is a tip I want to give if anybody's listening. And that is the best way to get recommendations, because anybody can endorse you. Endorsements are, I've been endorsed for cat herding and basket weaving, and I'm not kidding. You can be endorsed for anything, but a recommendation is somebody who's worked with you that gives you really great endorsement. The way you get a great recommendation is you recommend somebody first.
That's
right? You go in and you recommend them first and say, Ryan gave the best interview I've ever had on Bacon and Coffee about process. The man's amazing. He thinks about great things. And I put that up on your profile. You're going to see that. It's going to say, do you want to put it on your profile? Yes. What's the next thing it does? It says, would you like to reciprocate? And then when you reciprocate, we're all competitive, right? So competitive means you're going to work harder at giving me a better review than I gave you because you want to do better than I do. So getting people to buy into that process of owning the process, right? That's exactly what it's doing. It's getting them to own the process of giving me a review. Will I get 100% buy-in? No. But the ones that I do get are 10 times better than if I just said to you, Ryan, would you give me a review?
You know what? I love that, Brian. And just by chance this week, there was one night when I was not really sleeping well for whatever reason. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I posted 4 recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to know what do you think the first 3 emails in my inbox the next morning were?
New recommendations for
Well,
you.
it wasn't new recommendations right away, but I had 3 emails in my inbox. One of them said, "Ryan, you're the best!" exclamation.
Right.
Right? One of them was an email saying, "Thank you for the kind words. That was amazing and unexpected."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And this the impact that had on people. I love your tip on that because it's not something I do very often,
Right.
but I did it earlier this week. And then one of them came back and wrote this nice recommendation for me as well. And
Right.
um
And
and
you don't need 100
no,
recommendations. You need
no.
5 really, really good ones. So, you can also pick and choose which ones you want. So that's the beauty of it. But that's getting somebody to own the process, right?
That's right.
That's
That's
getting
right.
somebody engaged in the process. So that's
Yeah,
just a simple tip on the way it works. All right. So we're
I love
getting
it.
down to the last 3 minutes, my man. Can you believe it? Can you believe
Uh,
we've been doing this for 57 minutes?
No, this has been. I love your questions. This has been super fun. So
Yeah, no, it's been fun for me too, and I love the interaction with everybody, guys. Thanks for the questions. So, if people wanted to get a hold of you or get a hold of the book, what's the best way for them to do all that stuff?
yeah, so they can send me an email, Ryan at epszone.com, or they can check out our website is www.epszone.com, or they can connect with me on LinkedIn. I think we've been posting a lot of great content and tidbits and nuggets of from the book and things like that for people to improve engagement and
Mhm.
process alignment and things like that. So love to connect with people. And I can also send me an email and I'll send you my calendar and we can book some time and talk through whatever challenges you're having.
Yep.
This is my passion. This is what I love to do. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to engage and talk.
And for those of you who are seeing this before the end of February in Chicago, Ryan's going to be giving a presentation in Elgin, and I'm kind of co-sponsoring that too. So hit up Ryan, hit up me. We'll send you an invite. We got free tickets. It's $250. We'll give you a free ticket. So we have the ability to get people to see you live, ask you questions, get engaged. I mean, the biggest thing about this is going to be a process. This isn't something where you go into a store and buy a Snickers bar. This is something that you have to align to make sure it's going to be right for your business if you're going to do anything with it, whether you do it yourself or whether you hire somebody to come in and help you, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Exactly
Awesome.
right.
All right, man. Thank you so much for your time. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate you and all the knowledge you brought to my peeps. And with that being said, we are going to leave today with our bacon and coffee close. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful, wonderful week. Talk to you next week.